Hey guys, what's going on? Stephen EW here, and I have two questions for you. Are you unmotivated? Do you have that creator's block? Do you know the difference between the two? Well, that's what I want to discuss in this week on The Imperfect Speaker. And we'll get to that right after this introduction. I'll see you in a few. Hey phenomenal you, welcome back to another episode of the Imperfect Speaker channel. I'm Stephen EW, and in this week's episode, I want to cover the difference between being unmotivated and hitting that creator's block. I also want to give some suggestions and tips on how I recently got over being unmotivated and how I was able to get through that creator's block. Now, before we get into the tips, I just want to cover the difference between being unmotivated and having that creator's block. Both of them require energy, but there is a slight difference between the two. Now, when you're unmotivated, that means that you don't have that drive and you don't have that desire to perform that task that you want to perform. But when you have that creator's block, it's more of like a mental block. You may have the desire, you may have the energy, and you may have the drive to go, but something mentally is just prohibiting you from tapping into that creative mind, that creative space, the place where all your ideas dwell. And that's the difference between being unmotivated and having that creator's block. So whereas they both require energy, one is the lack of the desire and the lack of the drive, and the other one is just the lack of being able to tap into the home where your ideas and your creativity dwell. And now for tip number one, if you find yourself going through either one or both of these funks, I want you to know that it is okay. You're human. I'm human. Welcome to the community of the humans. We have emotions. They go up, they go down. This is not your fault. Everything needs to recharge. Our bodies need to recharge. Our brains included need to recharge. Everything requires energy. It is okay if you're going through this. Don't judge yourself so intensely. You know, the thing about it is that we are our worst critics. But if we was to not judge ourselves, but to believe in ourselves just as much intensity as we judge ourselves, where would we be? So I want you to know that it is absolutely okay. For me, I don't necessarily dwell on it, but I do have the self-awareness that, hey, at this point in time, I'm unmotivated. Hey, at this point in time, I do have this creative block. And then that way, I'm able to treat it better because I know specifically which funk I'm in, and then I have self-awareness that I am inside that mode. You know, if you haven't checked out in one of my videos, I talked about how self-awareness is probably the number one thing you want to be aware of if you want change to happen within your life, and that's in all areas, and this is included as well. So tip number one, give yourself a break. Let yourself go through the motions of being unmotivated. Let yourself go through the motions of having that creator's block, but have self-awareness that this is going on, and then we could take the necessary steps and let yourself go through this, because you have to let yourself recharge, both your body and your brain. Now, you don't want to be inside this funk too long, but as long as you have the self-awareness, I think that you'll be fine. And within saying that, let's move right into tip number two. Okay, so let's move on to tip number two. Remember, you are in control. You dictate how long you want to be inside this phase. Now, when it comes to having that creator's block, sometimes what you want to do is you want to expand past where you may currently be. And that means that you may be at that point in time limited to what you're looking at, to what you're seeing, to what you're tasting, to what you're hearing. You may be very limited, and that's probably why you're not really getting that spark when it comes to your ideas. So you are in control. You might want to start going for a walk. You might want to start reading books. You might want to start just doing things that are random, so then that way you can start to spark that randomness inside your mind, and maybe some ideas will come up from there. Now, when it comes to being unmotivated, again, your thoughts control your actions, behavior, mood, and so forth and so on. If you're unmotivated, you have to switch your thoughts from all of those downlifting, and that's the opposite of uplifting thoughts. You might want to switch from the individuals that you're talking to or you're surrounding yourself by, and that doesn't mean that you have to totally abandon them. But what it means is that the conversation that you're probably intaking, or the news or what you're watching that you're probably intaking, is not uplifting you. So you may want to switch that to some things or some individuals that are going to uplift you. And when your thoughts change from saying, I don't want to be unmotivated, I want to be motivated, then your thoughts are going to control your behaviors. But then you have to make a decision. So when you decide that you don't want to be unmotivated and you want to be motivated, then you have to make a decision to take the necessary action steps to become motivated. But ultimately, guys, I want you to know that you are in control. There's never going to be a situation in which you are not going to be in control of when it comes to you, especially internally. You control yourself. You don't necessarily need external things to dictate where you need to be, how you need to function. And again, I'm totally aware of, like this quarantine situation. There are certain circumstances in which we can't control, but like I said, we don't necessarily have to let those circumstances control us. So keep that in mind. Tip number 2, you are always in control. Okay, guys, so we're moving to the final tip. But before we do that, if you found value in the content that I provided so far, please hit that subscribe button. You can tell from my energy that I'm just so happy to be here with you guys, sharing my perception on how I was able to get out of the funk, and I want you guys to succeed just as much as I have. I want you guys to succeed and follow your dreams just as I'm doing the same thing. So if you found value, please hit that subscribe button and share if you feel that others might need this encouraging message. Now, let's go into tip number 3. Working on you is probably the best investment you're ever going to make. You know, I'm so happy that I decided to work on myself, because that ultimately is the treatment for me being happy, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same for you. Just the awareness of you wanting to change, of you wanting to become your desired self, of you just not wanting to be stagnant and being inside the same position that you are right now because you envisioned something greater for yourself, and you're actually going out there and you're actually doing what it is that you feel you need to be doing to reach your happiness, is ultimately going to be the goal. So working on you is probably one of the best investments you're ever going to make for yourself. It is the perfect treatment for you wanting to seek happiness. And think about it. When you're happy, you're much more inclined to be motivated, and you're much more inclined to have that creative spark. But when you don't have those things and you're still happy, you won't be inside that funk or that phase for that long, because it's not going to be aligned with your vibrations. And another thing is that if you're not working on yourself, and if you have all of these not so great thoughts, then what happens is that you're going to overthink things a lot, and you're going to become trapped inside the situation in which you're actually thinking about, because you don't have any inspiration. You're not at that vibrational frequency to where you can climb out of it. So working on you is probably the best investment you're ever going to make. It's probably the best thing the best gift that you can give to anyone, because when you're happy, you're able to make others happy. You're able to help others. You're able just to see things at a totally different perspective. So work on you. Work on you. Work on you. And that's tip number 3. Okay, so those are 3 steps in which I recently used because I'm a part of the human community, and I have up and down moments, and yes, I have emotions, and yes, sometimes I do have that unmotivational phase, and I do have that creative block, but these are 3 tips that I used to help get me outside of that funk and to get me back in front of this camera to record for you guys. So if you found value inside this video, please hit the subscribe button as well as the alert button so you're notified each and every time new content is dropped. As always, work on you like you're seeking a promotion, and leave comments below. I would love to hear some engagement. I would love to engage with you on a one-on-one, but I can only do that if you leave comments down below. And please share if you think that there's someone else who needs that inspiration, or just who needs the message, because they may be in a funk, or they may be going through that time where they have that creative block, or they may be unmotivated. I will see you next week. We will conversate. Till then, have a great day.